Hi, everybody. This is Sharon with Royalty Business Group, and I am here this evening to talk about multi-generational households. So, what is a multi-generational household? Well, normally it's a household that has multiple generations in it, right? So, it could be you and your parents, and it could be you and your adult children. It could be you, your parents, and your adult children. It could be you, your parents, and your adult children, and your grandchildren. So, that is a multi-generational household. But why are people living in multi-generational households now? Like, that has gone up. And you might be wondering, like, Sharon, why are you even talking about this? Well, I'm talking about it because I actually experienced it recently. My daughter and her family stayed with me for like 4 weeks. Can you imagine? 4 weeks. I lived by myself, and I had them here with me for 4 weeks. Now, that was a big change for me because I'm used to being by myself majority of the time. And when they came, it was a delight, actually. I really enjoyed having my grandchildren here and my daughter and her husband. And it gave me an opportunity to see them differently, see them interact with their children. I didn't always agree with everything that they did, but it allowed me to understand that everybody's different, right? Everybody raises their children differently. And they got to see how I lived, right? They got to see me and my element. My grandchildren got to see me work. I got to create some memories with my granddaughters. And so it was actually a delight. But what does that normally look like, for people who do it on a regular basis? There are a lot of people out here who are living in a multi-generational household because of different circumstances. It could be because they're taking care of elderly parents. It could be because their children can't afford to live on their own. Or we can't afford to live on our own. So we look at these different things for multi-generational households to see if this is something that was really prevalent. And it is prevalent in different areas. Hey, Sanaya. It is prevalent in different areas of the country, but it's also very popular in different ethnic groups. So why could this be? Well, for some ethnicities, they believe that it's good to continue to have multi-generational households. So I'm going to take a look at my notes because I can't think of it, remember everything off the top of my head. But Asians, they normally continue to live in multi-generational households. The top 3 ethnicities that live in multi-generational households are Asians, Hispanics, and Blacks. Also popular is that the fact that the multi-generational households, normally they are those persons that are non-American or foreign persons who live in multi-generational households. And so they normally live in the multi-generational household because, like I said, either because they can't afford to live on their own, they're taking care of a family member, but it could be intentional. I don't know how many of you watched this show, Greenleaf, but Jim Greenleaf was a multi-generational household. It had the parents, the pastor and his wife, and it had their children and their grandchildren. Now, of course, they had a big old house and people had their own section of the house they lived in, and then they had the common area. Who wouldn't want that? But there could be times where it's like where I said, for myself, I have a 2-bedroom apartment, and in my 2-bedroom apartment, there were at one point 8 of us in here. Now, that wasn't 8 like for a long period of time. It was just for a couple of nights. But I was able to accommodate everybody, and they slept comfortably. But considering that on a regular basis, there were about 6 of us, that could have been a little complicated. But as I mentioned, my children, my grandchildren, we all, got along for the most part. and I got to see how they lived. They got to see how I lived. But when you are doing it for a short period of time, you know that, hey, I can deal with this for a little while. When you have to live with others for a long period of time, then you have to determine, how is that going to really affect my finances? How is that going to affect the things that I really plan on doing for my future? Because when the more people you have in a household, that means the more people you have to feed, you have to take care of. My granddaughters, they are cute, but when they get hurt, one of the things I notice is that they always like to get a Band-Aid, right? Because they think, if I get a Band-Aid, it's going to stop the pain. But it doesn't stop the pain. It just, something to appease them for a little while. But those things add up, right? Every little thing adds up. I don't cook a whole lot, so I didn't buy a lot of food. But my daughter and her husband made sure that they had food and snacks in here, but it was constant, constantly making sure that the kids had something to eat. So sometimes you have to take that into account. Like, if I have to do that on a regular basis, how am I going to save for my legacy? How am I going to save for what I want to do for my financial goals and my retirement? Because for me, as the parent, as the grandparent, I plan on retiring in the next few years. What does that really mean for me? So that's what we have to think about when we're living in a family with more people. So you could think that if I'm doing it intentionally, then we need to sit down and have some conversations with the other adults that are going to be in the house, such as, what are they bringing to the table? What bills are they going to pay? How are they going to pay it? How often are they going to pay it? Are we setting money aside to determine on when you're going to move, or when am I going to move? Are we going to go purchase something together? Recently, a friend of mine, she and her mom purchased a home together, and I'm sure they had a plan on what that is supposed to look like, because my friend, her son just went off to college, so that's another expense, and now you're buying a house. So I'm sure they sat down to say, this is the goal, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. So also, if it's where you're intentionally having your parents to come back to live with you, or you go to live with your parents, what's that goal? What is the intention behind it? Did you sit down with your parents to say, okay, I'm coming back to help you to do better with taking care of each other, or I'm doing this so I can save some money so I can pay off my debts and get back to where I want to be or where I need to be financially? Just sitting down and having conversations either with your parents, if you're the one that's, living with your parents, or your parents are coming to live with you, and the same with your children, or, just all the adults in the household. It could be, again, your parents, yourself, your children, grandchildren, everybody that's going to bring in some money some type of way. You need to have a conversation on how that money's going to be spent. But you don't want to just spend the money because you have money coming in. You want to be intentional. Set some aside. You have to pay your tithes, offering, your charitable contributions. But then on top of that, you also want to pay maybe another 10%, or set aside a whole dollar amount, that's whatever's convenient for you, to put towards savings. And so, in our community, we normally don't look at savings. We have to make sure that we are intentional on how we are spending our money. We can't just create a budget, and some people think that's a bad word. At least I used to think that. Create a budget that will, at the end, you say, oh, I have some money left over. And then that money really isn't left over. The money is something that you're going to spend on something else. Well, you really shouldn't spend that extra money on something else. Every dollar should have a name, and you put the name on your money. So going back to the multi-generational households, and I was saying how the top three are Asian, Hispanic, and Blacks. So according to Pew Research Center, they had their research as of March 2022, 24% of Asians live in a multi-generational household, and it's due to saving money. Also, they said that there are 26% of blacks that live in multi-generational households to save money. And I had to put it all together, that there are Hispanics, I want to say, were the highest with 27%. But nevertheless, there are various reasons why people live in multi-generational households. And we have to understand how that impacts our finances, because we all have financial goals. We all want to leave a financial legacy. And living in a multi-generational household, you have to sit down with each other, respect each other's goals, respect what each other has to say in building that legacy. Make sure that you understand what's going on and how everything works, so you can do these plannings together. And once you have that first discussion, don't think that, okay, it's going to be all said and done. This is a continued conversation during the process of living together. And if you're going to plan on doing like my friend and buying property and things like that, you need to set up something where if one of you passes away, then what is the responsibilities of the others? Sometimes we have multi-generational households because we are taking in other family members. This is something I just thought about. So, what if you have to take care of your grandchildren because their parents aren't around? How is that going to impact your family? I know when I was young, my sister got sick, and my mom and dad had to take in my nieces. And one of my nieces was 5 days old, and the other one was 2 years old. And at the time, my mom and dad were still both working. So I'm sure that impacted them a lot, because I went to private school. Now they're grown. My parents were older when they had me, just a few years from their own retirement. And here they had a daughter that was sick, and they didn't know, what was going to happen with her, and they had to take care of an infant and a toddler. But they made it work. I mean, I don't know how they did it. Now I'm thinking back on it. It was just a blessing that they were able to do that. But they had to pivot. They had to make priorities, change their priorities at the time, but still remain focused on their goals. Because my mother was determined to retire when she became eligible, despite everything else that was going on in her life. And she did. She retired when she became eligible to retire, still took care of her grandchildren and me, who at the time, when my sister got sick, I was 9 years old. So from the time that my sister was sick at 9 and I was 9, she took care of me, took care of her 2 grandchildren. My parents took care of their 2 grandchildren, took care of me, took care of their daughter, who was paralyzed from a stroke, and retired when they chose to, not because they had to, was able to live in a multi-generational household until they, got older and we all grew up. So just thinking about this now and talking, I actually lived in a multi-generational household with my parents, who were older, and they had their adult daughter, and they had their grandchildren. We all lived together for many years. And not once did we go without, but I'm sure my parents, that wasn't their outlook or goal. Maybe when they first got married, they probably never even thought of having a child when they were in their 40s. But they did. And then, just a few years later after that, when they became in their 50s, then they had to go back and take care of their daughter, who, got sick, had a stroke, and became paralyzed, and then taking care of their granddaughters after that. But again, we made it work. There were times where our house was full of children, adult children, young children, all in that beautiful house that we had, and nobody went without anything. So, we just make it work. And but you have to think about those unexpected things that come up and think about your goals. They have to think about their goals and what they want, and just work together to make sure that everything turns out right. So a multi-generational household could be intentional, it could be unintentional, it also could be where it could be temporary, like my situation was with my daughter and her family, and it could be permanent, like it was with my parents and my sister and my nieces and I. So just making sure that, everybody can get along as much as possible. You have those discussions, continued discussions about financial goals and what your financial legacy is. I can tell you from experience, just as I'm sitting here thinking about, what I grew up and how I grew up, my dad was so savvy with money that, again, we didn't have to worry about anything. He made sure he had some savings. And he wasn't rich, but he made sure he put money aside so he could be comfortable, and if he needed to help any of his children or anybody, that he was able to do that. So he had his financial goals in place because he retired when he was ready. My mom retired before that, but they both were not, they both were in a place where I didn't know that they struggled. If they did, they didn't show it. We always had everything we wanted and needed growing up. And again, they had to pivot from what their plans were to taking care of, 3 additional people. My sister was out on her own when she had her children, and then she came back to live with us until, her children were grown and everything. So again, multi-generational households can work if you make sure that you work them. You make sure that everything is in place. You make sure that you have discussions on what it is that you are trying to do, because you don't have to stop doing or reaching your goal just because certain things change. You might delay them, you might have to pivot a little bit, but it's part of the journey. And the learning, growing is in the journey. It's always the challenge that makes you the better person going through the journey to reach that goal. So I want to thank you for joining me again this month. Next month, I'm hoping to have somebody to come and talk with us about Social Security and what all that means for us, no matter what age you are. Social Security is something that we all need to know more about. So I'm hoping to have someone to talk about Social Security, but I'm going to keep posting about upcoming events. If there's anything that you have a topic that you want to learn more about, please let me know. Just type it into the chat and let me know about what you want to know, what you want to learn about as far as finances and retirement. And I thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Robin, for dropping in. Again, I'm Sharon Harrell with Royalty Business Group. I'm a financial coach and retirement coach, and I am here to help you reach your financial and retirement legacy. And so you can reach me through Facebook. You can reach me through Instagram. You can instant message me. My website is royaltybusinessgroup.com, and you can see me there. And I thank you so much for attending. Hi, Sharon. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday. And thank you so much, everybody. Came here to talk about multi-generational households. So if you didn't catch me live, please watch the replay. And if you watch the replay, please leave your comments. I do want to know about, what you think about the lives. And I also want to hear from you about some topics that you might be interested in when it comes to finances and retirement. And like I said, for next month, I'm going to try to get someone from Social Security to talk about Social Security with us. But if I don't, I will send out some messages, some announcements on what I do expect the topic to be. All right, great talking to you again, and you all have a great day. Bye-bye.